his nest. And they didn't tell me nest, and she heard about me. It's not me. Somebody who's got a phone. No, mine's Zap's car. No, I leave her at home. So I thought I sounded like a joke.
Either way, you get it.
Yeah, we used to ride bikes and walking and everything, but she's, well, for years even like she was, one day she'd speak and then she was making up herself. After one meeting, that's all right.
He's
Yeah.
Bank Town Council is now in work session. First on the agenda will be Rita Hicks.
Good evening. Just to give you some idea of my background, I was clerk treasurer in Winona Lake, which is near Warsaw, northern Indiana, for 18 years. And I've been consulting to across the state now to clerk treasurers, training and giving some support for different things. One of the things that I noticed that Michelle and I have talked about would be investing, and I asked her if she knew that there was a resolution giving her the authority to invest and do the banking. And we didn't think so, so we wrote up a resolution.
They all have a copy of it.
Okay, yep. So I don't know if you want to read that, or I don't know how you do your resolution.
No, so you guys all have a copy there of Resolution 2019-5. So the resolution is authorizing the clerk treasurer, myself, of the town of Dayton to deposit, invest, and reinvest funds in local financial institutions designated as depositories. So to give me, I think this ultimately also allows me just to do like the daily deposits as well. And then we had talked about possibly getting some CDs and stuff like that. So this is what every clerk treasurer needs to be able to do that. So I just ask that the board make a motion to approve that so that I can move forward with Retha looking into getting some CDs with extra money that we have to help just earn money on the money that we have sitting there.
Is there any discussion? I'd make a motion we adopt resolution 2019-5.
Second. Been a motion made and properly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Since Mike's not here, is it still 4-0 or is it considered a 4-0? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
So when the town is going through the budget process, there are 5 different forms that must be completed. The Form 1 is pretty much your budget, each line item, each appropriation, and it comes up to a total. Form 2 is miscellaneous revenue, where you project, you're all looking, we're only going to deal with Form 4B. I'm just giving you an overview of the process. Form 2 is miscellaneous revenue. We project the miscellaneous revenue that you're going to receive. All in all, we're trying to determine what you need, what your need is in property taxes. But Form 3 is the advertisement of the budget. And I'm not going to get into all of the ins and outs of each form. That's something that I'll share with Michelle. But Form 4, then 4A is a synopsis, a total of all your appropriations into 4 categories. Category 1 is personal services, your salary, wages, and your all of the taxes, payroll taxes and such. For, category 2 is your supplies. Category 3 is professional services. Category 4 is your capital assets. So that's the breakdown in your appropriations. Form 4B is what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're just going to do one. We're just going to go through the general fund, which is the most important one. But I'm just going to give you sort of a review of that document. And the document title is Budget Estimate, Financial Statement, Proposed Tax Rate. It should be your the first form. And this is for the general fund, and this was last year's application, so for 2019, okay? So it was determined that the budget need was $337,106. The necessary expenditures for the rest of 2018 was $185,740. This is an 18-month overview of your budget. So they're comparing what you haven't spent in 2018 and what you are expecting to spend in 2019. So the total funds required to support this budget is $522,846. So the actual cash balance as of June 30th, 2018 was $170,865. Taxes to be collected for December, because when you're doing this budget, you really, most of the time, you've already received your June disbursement of your property taxes. So taxes to be collected for December was $105,967. The Form 2s, again, you're going to guesstimate your revenue that you're going to receive for the rest of 2018 for the 6 months, and what you perceive that you're going to receive in 2019, miscellaneous revenue. So 8A is the rest of 2018, and that was $40,277. Total column B, budget form, is $81,265. That's the estimate for 2019. So the total funds that you have to support this budget is $398,374. So you have a need of $124,472. Now, you always want to have an operating balance. My belief and my philosophy was, whatever your budget is for, so $337,000, you want to have 50% of that in your cash balance at the end of the year, because you're not going to get your big revenue until June. So to support your first 6 months, you should have enough in your ending cash balance to take care of you until that time. So, and here they put in $118,725. So the amount to be raised by the tax levy is $234,058. Any questions on this? Sort of get the concept. You're dealing with 18 months. A lot of this is guesswork. I mean, pretty educated. And when they send you your 1782, which is the approval of your budget, they may have sort of squeezed this a little bit better than what you had and what the information, because you're getting the estimates from them. They're telling you to, take so much of last year and, but it becomes a clearer number by the time they approve your budget. But that's sort of the process that you go through. My suggestion is June 30th is the deadline, not the deadline. June 30th is the timeline that Michelle will start working on the budget, because she has to have June 30th reconciled with the bank. And then she starts using those numbers for the budget process. I would suggest that you have your supervisors be looking at their budget to give you some idea, and so if Michelle has some idea of what to be applying for next year. And it's always very helpful if you can, if possible, let her know if there's going to be a raise in the wages and so forth. So she can put those figures in, so she can see if you can afford to do that. So, you know, you're sort of, okay, let's, maybe we give the employees, and this is for them, maybe we give the employees a 5% increase. But then as she's working through, she's thinking, no, we can't do that, you know. So you have that process that you're going through. But be realistic, you know, on what you're going to be suggesting. But that's sort of the timeline. Then she'll begin working on the budget in Gateway and in Keystone, because you can upload this budget, which is very helpful. That's one of the pluses for Keystone.
You said that's the June 30th date?
Yes.
That I will begin.
Yes, she has to get the bank rec
Or so it would probably be like the first week of July, because the bank won't have June's statement until probably the first week of July or middle.
Right.
But I've already given Mark the utilities funds and the MVH, and then I have Scott's general printed out in there to give to him, so that they can kind of look over it and give me an idea, so they can look over it in the next month to start thinking about what Scott might need as for police. And then I'm assuming Ashley would get with Mark, since you're streets, and you guys give me an idea of what we're looking at needing to budget for next year.
And you, I think you folks have gone through a hearing, a budget hearing, and then the actual budget approval. There's 2 different days that you do that. So let's talk about the fund report. The only thing that I'd like to bring up, we just last week developed a new fund called MVH Restricted. About 2.5 years ago, the State Board of Accounts came up and said that your MVH distribution needs to be split 50-50. 50% goes into MVH and 50% goes into MVH that is strictly for construction. So that's just your distribution. I mean, I don't know that I know the amount, but then they put a hold on it because they couldn't determine how they wanted us to keep track of that. And I let you know, I'm going to pat some clerk treasurers on the back here. They came up with an idea. The day that they gave us this information and said we had to do an Excel file, and it just was, we had a lunch break, and at our table we found out a way for them to do this, which is exactly what they're doing now 2 years later. So just to pat the clerk treasurer on the back. But anyways, so Michelle is going to be transferring that 2019, what you've received in 2019, because at this point, that's all she's required to do. That when they came up and said, okay, we're going to label it MVH restricted 50%, you just need to do the minimum, or the minimum that you can do is your current year, 2019. If she went back into 2018, it would be a matter of determining how much was 50% and then how much you spent already on construction. So to simplify everything, she's just going to do the 2019. So she'll be making that transfer.
So when you say construction, that, am I reading correctly, that's not road maintenance?
Correct. It is construction. You could pay the construction for engineering, and the actual construction, and it seems like there's something else. There's like 3 different areas that can be covered. But they have a email out giving you all of the ins and outs of it that we can find, and Michelle can have a copy of it.
So, roads, sidewalks, and maybe you don't recall.
Not even sidewalks.
I think when they talked about it, it was just strictly roads.
You can engineer, it was salaries. If you know, Mark had to do some work just on that construction, he spent 2 hours on that, you could pay him out of that. So it's very restricted, as it's labeled, restricted. The only other thing that I would like to talk about is a couple different things. MVH, local road and street, in the MVH restricted, that is new. That is strictly for street projects, and, you know, street related. The other thing that I'd like to explain to you is utility funds should be looked at as a business. And they are only responsible for the actual utility expenses that are incurred by that business. So you can't pay from water what wastewater owes, that kind of thing. You have to keep and be very diligent about that, you know, that it is strictly for the utility that it is designated. Wastewater pays for wastewater expenses, water pays for only water expenses. Any questions on that?
I mean, I think as a board, we've done a pretty good job
Yeah.
in keeping that stuff separated.
Yeah, right. Cable franchise fee, I know you passed a resolution and ordinance and something that's gonna be for 88.
Well, yeah, that's what, remember, we had talked a couple meetings back about the cable franchise, and then you guys had said that we're supposed to be transferring money. So I did, if you wanna take a copy, I made copies for everybody. So May 6th of 2013, an ordinance was passed that the cable franchise fund is strictly dedicated to ADA.
And that's around 7,000 or 8,000 or
No, I think it's 16.
16.
It's 16, well, hold on. The cable franchise.
22,572.
Yeah, that's the current cash balance, I believe. So, yeah, so that is strictly, so there is no transferring, it's in there, and that's what that ordinance was passed, that it's dedicated to that.
So that could be used for putting sidewalks in?
I think that's what we took, you can,
I
yeah,
would think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we have a lot of sidewalks that aren't up to
Right.
much of a standard
Right.
Yeah.
and, you know, need worked on.
So, any other questions? Anything? The only thing that I wanted to share with you on the appropriation is something that would be beneficial for you to sort of look. If you look at the left, the very left column, it says percentage left. This is the end of May. This was run for the end of May. So come June, and Michelle hands you another appropriation report, you should have 50% left. That would sort of help you decide what you wanted, you know, and a lot of this will be done through Michelle and I working through it. But just to give you the understanding of what we're doing is, if we go down through here and if you look, we sort of talked about this earlier. If you look at 101-00-1133, it had a current budget. The very first column is the current budget. It has a current budget of $5,000. You look over and you see a minus 2576.35. It's overexpended. Now we're going to look into that to see actually what was taken out of it, see if it was legitimate or not, you know, or something that, you know, she just didn't know where to take it from.
I think it actually ended up being the annual insurance we were paying it. I think I accidentally clicked the wrong appropriation account, which is easy to go in and adjust and fix. It's not, you know.
But at June 30th, when you received the appropriation report, everything is fine if it's 50% or more. If it's less, then you need to be adjusting it for next year. Sort of look at your expenses and see if it needs to, just need to, lower appropriation here and raise the appropriation there. So that's pretty much all I need to say about that.
What about this insurance one that's?
Yeah, that's the other one.
I think it has to do with that annual insurance that we just paid. I just don't think it was either budgeted in or so that's what we're gonna pull.
We'll look into it,
Yeah.
see.
And like I said, those are easy, click and fix and change. I am doing an additional appropriation that I will have to file in the paper. It has to be published for 10 days. So it will be brought at July's meeting because it's too soon. It's too soon to obviously be published for 10 days. So we are doing it's right, it's the digital, okay. For the,
LOC.
yeah, it's the LECE because it's not, we have money in there, but it's not budgeted. So all of the training for the police that we've been paid out, it wasn't budgeted. So that, local road and street and the rainy day. So,
Local road and bridge.
oh, did I say streets?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so we did find out, so the local road and bridge, since we are getting the CCG, or the community crossing grants, there has to be a budget. It has to be budgeted for that grant money to go in there. So we're just doing that, so you guys will have, that resolution at July's meeting. I just have to do the publication and all of that before I get, so I just want to give you guys a heads up that we are, that I'm doing those three additional appropriations.
Any questions? The next form is, I sort of looked at your financial look. This gives you sort of a picture of your funds, comparing it to your budget, something that Keystone doesn't really have any kind of report. So the funds that I have entered in here, general, MVH, local road and street, CCI, CCD, edit, I guess that's what you folks call it, edit, rainy day and riverboat. These are all funds that you can use for capital projects. And I'm hoping what I wanted to show you was what you have above and beyond your budget. So if you have any extra funds in that individual fund, if you have any extra money in that fund, this should show it to us. So the first column, B, is the beginning year balance. That's the cash balance for these funds, and it's just these funds. That's the beginning cash balance. The current cash balance as of, we changed it. This is actually May 30th, May 31st, yeah. I was here last week and I put May 29th, but got here this week and there have been some changes, so I decided to change it. So May 30th, or 31st, that's your current cash balance. Column F is the remaining budget for that fund. So in the general fund, your current cash balance is $222,632, but you have appropriations remaining for that budget, that fund, of $194,545. So if you expend all of it, which you have the option not to expend all of it, but if you do, then it's in here as an entity. The miscellaneous revenue is, I used the 1782 of what they said your miscellaneous revenue was going to be for 2019. I subtracted what you've received so far, and so miscellaneous revenue for the rest of the 7 months is $42,000 for the general fund. Then your property taxes, you haven't received your June distribution nor your December, so you're scheduled to receive $234,048. So the projected fund balance, fund cash balance at the year end is $304,120, or $213. I used your budget of this year and sort of tweaked it a little bit, gave it about $1,000 or so. So the projected for next year, which will be 2020, is $329,000. And now we go back to the philosophy that I carry, and that is you should have 50% of it in your cash at the end of the year. So you have, the projected fund balance is $304,213. You should have $164,500, which gives you cash available of $139,713. Now, I did that for each and every of these, let's see, 8 funds. You do not have a budget yet for rainy day, and that's, we're going to apply for $20,000. And we're just doing that in case you need it. If you don't need it, you've got it there next year. This rainy day balance of $47,375 has been that amount for 5 years. You know, rainy day, for folks out here in the audience, is if you have a budget, a total budget for the town of $800,000, and that's high, but anyways, and if you did not expend all of your budget for the current year, you can transfer 10% of that $800,000. You could transfer $80,000 over to rainy day. It's a savings account. It's a wonderful tool that our legislators gave us. It's a good tool to use to save for capital projects.
And I believe, was it last year or the year before, we did transfer over to rainy day? 20-some odd thousand dollars, I believe.
So if we go down to the total of the column J, it states here that there's $823,536 projected cash balance. And if you look at column L, all you need is $341,500 to support the minimum of your budget for next year. So that gives you a net above what is needed for just the budget is by $482,000. So you have about $482,000 that you are not going to be using this year. Now, here's my other philosophy. I had a capital budget. I asked my supervisors to determine the age of their trucks and their machinery, and let's get a schedule out. And I had a whole Excel program of a capital budget that in 5 years I'm going to need a truck. In 3 years we're going to need a police car, you know. And then I set money aside to accomplish that. And so I've got here reserved for capital assets and other contingencies that if something on here, goes out of whack, I would set aside $150,000 of that $482 and not spend it. So my recommendation is you have $332,000 that you could be using for whatever projects that you have on the works, that your budget is not taking care of. And I'm sorry, if you notice on MVH in column H, that's the $50,000 that you need for your community crossing grant, your portion of that grant. So that's already figured in all of this. What is not figured is the Yost Road. That's something. And this is your tool. This is something that you can use, and you can, deviate however you all feel that you want to. But this is just information.
And per our discussion, because we had talked about as a suggestion, being able to put back like maybe 200,000 a year for the next 4 years to have 800,000. But Retha has said that that is not a possibility as far as how we're looking. So just to kind of put it out there, if we were to have to get a bond, again, we're looking at 4 years down the road. We can't guarantee what percentages. We can't, it all depends on who we would get the bond from and everything. So if we were, so I talked to Horizon Bank, who we currently have one with, that will be paid off next month. If we're looking at again, this is a ballpark. Say we got $1 million bond for 5 years. He said at 4%, we are looking at a $200,000 principal annual payment, and then approximately $36,000 a year in interest, and that's usually semi-annually. And again, he said rates could be higher or lower in 4 years. Again, it all depends on who holds the bond and what their stipulations are, but that's kind of like an idea if the town has to go get a bond.
You're talking a 5-year bond.
A 5-year bond,
Yeah.
$1 million bond for 5 years.
Yeah, payments would be pretty steep on that.
Yeah.
5 years.
He said that we could potentially stretch it out a little bit longer, but he said that he doesn't think it's going to be, it could go out that much farther. So.
A project like a Yost Road, I would think as far as the drainage and stormwater that was involved in something like that, could be paid out of the stormwater fund.
Yes, and Mark and I talked about, and Michelle talked about that, I thought we decided about 90,000 maybe could be paid out of water and
It's hard to
stormwater.
estimate the cost of
Yeah.
what
But whomever is your engineer, I think they could give you an idea of
Sure.
what each, fund or utility is responsible for.
Right.
So yes,
I don't know the board's feelings, we have an economic development fund. I don't know the criteria on that.
that's the edit, it's on
Yeah,
here.
okay, it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I'm
the
sorry
other-
about that.
uh-huh.
I see.
On the back side, I sort of went over this with Michelle and Mark, and they had some questions, and so I extended my report. I just wanted to know, because the question was asked, well, can we get 300,000 every year? And so I went quickly and went through this. I put the beginning cash balance for 2018 and the ending cash balance. The difference is on 2018 is you spent more than you brought in. So there was a difference of 70,000. But in 2017, it was a good year, and you came to a positive 185. And in 2016, it was 161. For 2019 projected, you are about 29,000 negative. So your beginning year balance for all of these, just these funds, is 852,310. The projected ending cash balance is 823,536. So you're going to spend, if you spend all of your budget, you're going to expend 29,000 more. But, which isn't true, because you're not going to, well, I guess we did put rainy day in there, but Riverboat, you probably won't spend that, so, and again, if everything here is done, that's the end product. But you have a way of controlling that by not spending all of your budgets. And if you don't spend all of your budget, it just goes into your cash balance, which allows you to do what you're wanting to do the next year.
Right.
There's a myth out there that if you don't spend your budget, you lose it. No, that's not true.
One area that we can improve our budget is by investing,
Yes,
correct?
yes, you're going to increase your revenue.
Yes, and you've looked at it closer than I have, but the total amount of money that we would have, that we would be investing.
That's going to be our next project, is to determine the extra that you have. It'd be in all of your funds, utilities and the whole 9 yards. So we're talking a lot more than this.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
My recommendation is that you have a CD maturing every month.
Right.
You know, start out 3 months and then you have them maturing every month. And they're all 3 months CDs, and sometimes we can go 6 months. So the longer you go, the better interest rates you're, but that's our next project,
Right.
is to look on all that.
You know, and I've certainly not dove into it, but to me it looks like, you know, that's an opportunity to increase our revenue by, you know, 30 to 45,000 per year. I don't know if you agree or disagree, or,
I think so.
yeah. So then, you know, I think that would definitely, obviously, having an extra 30 or to 45 a year would definitely help our reserve and budget both.
Correct.
I know one of the things that I've had brought to my attention, talk about reserve accounts and utility reserve, and I told Retha I don't want anything brought to the table that would risk water bills going higher, rates getting increased. I already pay $145 a month. I don't want to pay more than that. So I asked Retha, because I asked her, because there has been talk that we have such a high stormwater balance, could we then decrease stormwater rates? And then there was also concerns about if Lafayette's water rates go higher. And she explained that that the utilities are, can you explain like how, what we talked about, that, because I had asked, is there a way for us to lower our bills? What would be the only reason to have to increase bills? Because we don't.
Well, I think we sort of went into that early, in that each utility is responsible for its own expenditures. But you would have to look at your stormwater and see what your expenses are for the year. That, to me, you're sort of in a tight place here, because you are having some other city take care of your treatment and so forth. And we were in that same situation with wastewater in Warsaw. They treated our waste, and you know, so we were at their mercy. And but stormwater, you could look at to see what your yearly expenses are for the last 5 years, and see if that's someplace where you could, you know, lower the stormwater rate.
A couple things. We routinely use a rate consultant.
Yes, yes,
on
most
both,
definitely.
you know, on our water systems, and you know, I think we've been pretty happy with him.
Right. And I think your fund demonstrates that they've done a good job.
Yeah. On stormwater, you know, that account's been accumulating, but we are, you know, spending it on maintenance now. And you know, there's more maintenance that needs to be done, you know, when we get into working on Dayton Road and stuff.
Right.
And then my understanding, talking with the gentleman that handles Okra, I believe it's Okra grants and such, a lot of grants, if and when we should apply for them, require us to be collecting a minimal stormwater fee. And I believe that minimal fee is the $5 that we're currently correcting.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if we don't collect that, then there's grants that you can't even apply for. And you know, I think when we have an economic development committee appointed for the Yost Road area, then you know, that economic development committee could be applying for other grants, or applying for grants for, like, you know, downtown beautification and, you know, street lights or flower potter pots, or you know, whatever a person may want. just to use an example.
Right.
I know that Economic Development Committee has to be in place before we can even apply for any of that kind of stuff.
Was stormwater just raised, like what was raised by $1, like last year or previous year? Wasn't there something that was raised by $1?
We,
Or was there a suggestion?
we need to raise our trash pickup by $1 to kind of balance out the leaf collection.
Speaking of,
Yeah, but that has not been done, but that is something that we should do.
so speaking of trash, is that a yearly contract?
This last contract was a 2-year contract.
So we're looking at bids in 2020?
I would think so, yes. Yeah. June or July is the anniversary, so we're
Okay.
just passing
So-
the 1-year mark on that.
Okay, so we do have that for another year.
So, any other questions? I think we sort of talked about the capital budget. That would be my recommendation. That sort of helps you determine, actually what you do have in excess. And it's really, and we sort of talked to Mark today, bless his heart. Utilities should have a budget. And that's just a matter of looking back 2 years of your expenses and so forth and sort of develop a budget for your utilities too. It's just prudent to do that, so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you want to take or questions from residents first real quick? If anybody
Any
have any questions for you? Anybody have any questions for Retha? Okay.
That's for a motion
Very
to
nice,
adjourn.
thank you.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion made, properly seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, Mike still must be at his doctor's appointment still.
Open town council meeting. We have Greg Malacus, Baker Farms Utility Service Agreement. I think they want to explain about this, a letter you guys sent us to the town.
Thank you. Just for the record again, Dan Teeter, Attorney of Riley Teeter and Shire. Greg Malacus is present, Pat Cunningham is present, and Andrew Mix is also present, and we have to respond to any questions. I think that's one issue, Mr. Kohler. The other one is the easement that we consider. I wanted to ask.
Could you speak up just a little?
That's as loud as I can talk, okay? I'm sorry.
Could you turn
I
this
can't,
way?
I can't talk anymore.
The other issue is the easements. The easements is talking about.
So, do you want to go back through that easement or see where we are with that easement first? Or you want to talk about Greg's utility service? I thought it might be worthwhile just to spend a couple of minutes on that easement so we know where we are.
If you want to talk about the easements, I'd like to read a letter from the church that they sent us today. The Town Board of Dayton United Methodist Church is willing to extend a 15-foot easement to the town of Dayton through parcel 791209-151 00012, 13.87 acres on Dayton Road. Along the east side of Dayton Road, after a constructive agreement is reached, no easement presently exists, nor was required by the utility service agreement on February the 5th, 2002. Any attempt to secure said easement without permission of the church will result in legal action. It is our intent to work with the town and the developer to improve Dayton. Again, the Dayton United Methodist Church will welcome an agreement presently presented, properly stating the terms and surveyor description so we may examine before approval is given. Dave Crandall and Bob Adams.
Did we get a copy of that?
Yeah.
Somebody get us a
Yes.
copy? I've not seen it, I don't know if you ever seen it. Judge has been kind.
They sent it Saturday.
Yeah, I understand, but just for our record. Well, I think that's great that they're willing to cooperate and work with us a little bit. The last time I was here, I went through that, the easement and how we would go on the west side for a portion of it to the end of lot one of the Liberty Farm subdivision, and then come across, and then come down to our northern property line. So that's still our intent. And then, we've looked at the utility service agreement as well, and I'm grateful that the church is willing to work with us. I don't know in what aspect or respect they're going to work with us. But if you look at the utility service agreement, I think it's pretty clear that it talks about an agreement for Dayton United Methodist Church. It doesn't say it's the peak, it doesn't say it's the trustees. Everywhere throughout it, it talks about just the church. So it says the town of Dayton agrees to provide water supply service to and accept sanitary sewage from a 1.76 acre church site. See the description. So that's what you did, and that was the development area. But it says it's subject to the attached, and it attaches the conditions. And again, condition number 2, I think is very important, where it says the owner, church, shall provide all easements necessary to provide water, provide utility, which is water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer service at no cost to the town of Dayton for the improvements set forth herein, as well as along the east side of Dayton Road south from MH2, which is your northern manhole, thank you, to our property, and to their property line, which abuts our property line on our north side. I think that's very clear. Both, signatures on this. One is the United Methodist Church, and the other is the chairman of the trustees. So
Isn't there a legal description with that agreement, a description of the land?
that's only of the development area. It has nothing to do with condition number 2.
Well, sure it does. I mean, it's an agreement.
I disagree.
Well, Dan, I disagree, and I think that's why the church wrote that letter. You just got done reading a letter that it only goes partway down.
Well, that's their opinion.
Well, but it's your opinion too.
No.
Yes, it is. It's your opinion, because the way I read it, and lawyers say that attachment with the description of the land is what they signed for. They didn't, my utilities agreement on our side of the road, Dan, is for, it doesn't have anything to do with the land outside the town limits, neither does this one have anything to do with the land outside
The
the town.
reason yours doesn't is your final plat that you recorded had easements for utilities going to the end of lot number 1. That's what you agreed to. I don't disagree with that. United Methodist Church is having an argument. Maybe you agree with that, that's fine. Maybe your lawyers agree with it. Our lawyers don't, and I guess it really depends upon your lawyer, which is not here tonight, because we presented him with an easement. And the only change that he made on it was the date. So I think our easement is satisfactory to him, and we would request that this board seek the signature of the church on that so that we can proceed. It's taken a year, and we're still not any further along. Maybe it will take an action in court to get it resolved. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing, it didn't take a year for the easements, because you just started talking about the easements the last few months. You've been talking about putting the horse before the cart. And remember down at the stormwater meeting downtown last fall, I said that you guys signed any easements. Remember at that meeting, I said you guys have the easements for either side of the road. You hadn't even asked either the owners on either side, water or sewage, for easements. You're just bringing that up in the last, you're getting to the end of this project. And it can all be worked out, but you're getting to the end of the project, and the church now is saying there's no easements. And
It's been a period of time, Ron. Maybe it's been 6 months, maybe it's been 8, I don't know. But
I think it's been about 3 or 4 months.
We don't always agree on the years, so that's fine. So I think that's one issue, so we want to present that to the board. Your lawyers got it. We agree with his red line, which is just to change the date, we're gonna have to change the date again. But even with us preparing that, which is what you asked us to do, it still needs to make, you guys need to make a demand on the church to sign. Without that, we're not gonna be able to move forward. The church may say no, or as Ron said, maybe they'll want this or that, or they want something else, and that's fine, we're happy to talk about that. But we'd like to proceed.
And I believe that is with Teeter now, or not Teeter,
I'm teeter, that's all right.
with Reed Bertol. And I think we did.
Well, he's on vacation now, we've sent it to him, but he said he read along with that to us, with the date change, we accepted that, but he's not back yet, so, yes, I assume you guys would.
But we haven't even talked about this easement.
Pardon?
We haven't even talked
Right,
about it.
I understand it, so you need to talk to the,
And
and if there's any other questions that he has or changes, that's, be happy to take a look.
How large is the easement? Like, width-wise on the road in our community?
Yes, I'm Pat Cunningham with Western Associates, land surveying engineering firm, but the easement itself is 35 feet wide. And the reason for the width of the easement is twofold. But the primary reason is the fact that the sanitary sewer is so deep. And so we need the width in order to construct the easement. And the top of the trench is pretty wide when you get down to 16.
Is that from the center of the road, from the edge of the road?
No, that's from, just off the edge of the road into the church property. It's not, does not include the pavement area.
I was just wondering what.
Comes pretty close, it goes through all those trees there, right?
Yes.
35 foot, all the trees that have come down and take it right over to the edge of the pavement, I think.
Yes.
So I'm happy to come back for another meeting. Sorry, I've got a cold, so I can't, I'm hoarse here a little bit, but I'm happy to come back for another meeting. With Reed's here, if that's what you want, to have my input, his input, we can talk about it. You tell me where we are, we've done what you've asked us to do at this point.
I'd like to ask a question. Normally, everybody, from Mark, the people in town, everybody say you take the water on one side, you take the sewage on the other side. Why are we zigzagging across the road? I mean, I'd like to hear from our town manager what he thinks about going across and putting everything in one trench. I would think everybody tells me that years down the road we'll have problems when we put the water back on the west side of the road. But you're gonna take a 90-degree curve over there, it seems to me like, and then you're gonna go down to your subdivision and come back across the road, and that just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I don't think we've even, have we all agreed to put this water and sewage on the one side of the road?
Yes,
When did we decide that? It just,
it's probably been 3 weeks, back when we had Reed get, when we instructed Reed to start
we
working on
voted on
the
that, put it on the one, everything on the one side of the road.
When was that, 3?
I personally remember that they, don't quote me, but I thought Michelle said that it's safer and more logical to put one on each side of the road, that you would not want them both on the same side of the road, because when somebody goes to develop, it's like you got a big giant zigzag puzzle underneath your road.
That's what I thought she left it for us to think about.
I don't think there was ever a vote
And
that
go,
on
and
one
no,
side.
I don't think we've ever voted on it, or we've really had a discussion. I think you guys came out 3 months ago and just said, this is the way it is, we want it this way. Ron and Cindy, you have no control over it at all, and you're gonna go down that one side. But I don't think we ever voted, Dan, to put it on one
I
side.
don't know that, but I would say that.
You were
He
here
did
at the
say-
meeting.
Well, you were too. You don't know either.
Well, I know that we didn't vote on it, Dan.
Do the easements.
That's fine.
So how did you get this, easement? You're coming out, the church is saying, basically, there is no easement, you're saying you're gonna force an easement down that one side. Mark, what do you think about water and sewage? What do you
Where
think?
we are, maybe, right?
It's not this one.
Well, it's best to keep them separated, that's the way they're usually installed, future maintenance and future development. So the proper way to do it would be to have the water main on one side and the sewer on the other. I think that in the future, the west side of Dayton Road will see development. So
For sure.
it just makes sense for initial installation and future development and maintenance on the system to have on certain side.
You would have tap-on points.
Part of it.
Well, I mean, if necessary, they can answer some of the questions. I assume there would be tap-on points that would be predetermined along that line, you know, manholes and.
Actually, we were asked a question, but we never going to give you a chance to answer.
Sorry.
So if I could go ahead and address the issue. Initially, I talked with your attorney, who was Mr. Bumbleberg at the time, and talked to him about the placement of the water in the sewer. And we knew that the sewer is currently on the west side of Dayton Road. And so there was discussion on extending it. And your attorney at that point in time advised me, he asked me, he says, can you take it on the other side? And I said, yes, we can take it on the other side, and we can meet all Indiana Health Department and IGN requirements as far as separation and as far as placement relative to the sanitary sewer and the water. And he says, well, then what I would recommend as an attorney is that you take it to the other side, because otherwise this town is going to be in lawsuits. And that was his response. All right. So we decided at that point in time that we would work at designing the sewer and having the water on the east side. And in doing so, for example, you just mentioned a quagmire under the road. That's not necessarily the case. We're not going to take service laterals across the road. For example, right now, if we put it on the west side, there would still be water needed on the east side. For example, if the church developed their 10 acres, there would only need to be one water main. Well, two water mains, because your consultant would probably require a looping system. So there would be two crossings for that 10 acres. And the same way with our side. If we take it down the west side, there will be two crossings on the for our side to loop our system. So if you're imagining all kinds of laterals and things like that, service laterals across or under the road, that's not going to happen. But the same thing is going to happen here. If have the water main on the same side as the sewer, there's no conflict with the sewer, and the reason being the sewer is 16 feet deep and the water's 5 feet deep. And so that eliminates the conflicts. And the same way, if Ron decides to do something on his side of the road with his land, he's going to need two water mains coming across in order to do his system and then loop it back into the water main. And the same thing, so nothing much different whether we take it across the east side or the west side. A lot of times, yes, there is a difference, because if you have a water main and a sanitary sewer near the same elevation, then you end up with a lot of conflict.
Well, let me ask you this, as you look down Dayton Road, because you guys have the options across the road for another 198 acres, which is probably another 300 houses, 350 houses. But on the east side of the road, you have housing there, you have Peshua Drive, there will be no more subdivisions there. So it seems to me like the brunt of your housing is going to be on the west side of the road. It'd be better to have the water over there instead of just feeding the one lot and disregarding the other 5 to 10 fields of houses. But in another, Joe Bumbleberg, he's not our lawyer anymore, and I don't know why he could say.
I'm just saying how.
I don't know why he could, if he privately said that to you or whatever, but I'm on the council and didn't okay that, or I don't think any of us okayed it, and I don't know that he had the authority to say to you guys he wants it that way. But he quit. He's no longer advising us. I personally don't think he gave us all the right information to begin with, and maybe that's why he's not here too. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about now,
Mr. Kohler,
you know?
that's not up to me to decide, all right?
Well, you're
I'm
you're
just giving
saying
you-
it.
I'm just, no, I said I'm just giving you the information of how this
Well,
occurred.
I'm doing the same thing to
All
you,
right,
so.
thank you.
Now, what I can understand is I talked to Greg before and said the water could be on our side. And I talked to him several months ago, said we had a couple things work out, those are worked out. I've said to Ashley, I've said to many people, we could have it on our side, and you guys still adamantly want to push it on the east side of the road. So you've got landowners on both sides willing to work with you, but you're trying to, it seems to me like, force an issue, and that's why this letter is right here, and you guys know why this was written. Because it sounds to me like they're willing to go to court, and you guys push the issue to take it down their side of the road, and they certainly don't want more than a 15-foot easement. So, why not negotiate with everybody? Why not, Greg, I called you the other day, and you said you had to get along pretty quick with this, and I said, it seems to me like everybody's willing to work with you on that issue, but.
Are
But yet you
you,
want
are you
to-
willing to give the developer an
Do what?
easement?
Do what?
Are you willing to give the developer a water line easement across your property at this time?
At some time, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's the issue.
No, well, we got it,
With no conditions?
well, there is normal conditions, just like with the church. They're not gonna give you something with no conditions. I mean, I think anytime you take somebody's land, when you guys wanna put a water line up in our field there, what did your engineer say? It was like $4,800 easement to buy the easements. I don't think you just go in and snatch and grab and use people's land without paying them something. Or you at least sit down and talk about it, and see if it's $1, or if it's $100, or if it's 100,000, right? Or do you
Well-
guys think you can just go down to the
Mr.
church and just automatically force your way and get it free? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Kohler, the last time that we talked about an easement, when I said conditions, I didn't mean money or things like that. What I meant is that you were putting conditions or asking for conditions on, with the developer that he get other individuals to commit to do things.
I didn't ask him to do a damn thing. He offered to do something for us, and I said to stay out of it. You know?
I was at that same meeting, it's not the way I remember, but that's
Well,
fine. That's where.
And I don't even come downtown.
That's what
You
I
guys-
was referring
Okay, you
to.
guys called me up and begged me to come downtown and have meetings with you. You also wanted me to, you snooze me and everything when you think you don't have the rights to come across the street when you were stuck and you couldn't legally come across the street. You're snoozing all over the place, and the minute you find a that's what you're doing. The minute you find a technicality that you can, like Dan said at the last meeting he was out here, well, Kohler, Ron, and City have no say-so, so we can just proceed. And all of a sudden, it's a whole different climate,
Mr.
you
Coleman,
know?
we did
Call me
come,
wrong.
we did come to a meeting of this board and request permission from this board to proceed in trying to acquire easements on behalf of the board, and that was approved. And then also in the last meeting that I came to, I presented a drawing that showed the easement and showed that the water line would go to the, on the east side at that point in time, and showed the easement that we wanted to acquire.
Did I say
And,
anything wrong?
and there was a vote, because it was, we asked if we could proceed, and so your attorney also said, this is the way it can go. So we would prepare the easement, and Mr. Teeter prepared the grant of easement, the actual document itself, submitted it to your attorney, and your attorney has approved it. And that's where we are.
Well,
So there was a
keep
vote.
pushing to one side. It seems to me like what the church is saying is that I'm worried about the town ending up in court. I'm worried about down 20 years from now, we've already got, because you guys annex around, we got a hole, because it's a county in the middle of our city now, because you guys didn't want the church to have a say-so. Then we're gonna have our water line zigzagging all over down there, and you're gonna cram it. It sounds to me like they're willing to go to court to fight you on it. And you guys still stand here, and you got all the people on both sides of the road at least willing to talk to you,
And I said,
you know? It just seems like it's the same old stuff's been happening for a year and a half. It just push, push, push is what it is, and the whole town knows it.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. If I could speak to the board. The last time I was here, I said that we had the right pursuant to the final plat that was recorded for the west side to bring water down to the end of lot 1. That's what I said, and from there we would go across and come down. It's still my opinion. We have a letter there from the church that says that's their opinion. I don't know if that's the town board's opinion or just Mr. Kohler's opinion. But to me, I think it needs to come from the entire board to say, what is your opinion? Because when I look at this utility service agreement, and I've reached out to your consultant as well, I think we both agree that it applies to all the ground. It doesn't matter whether it was in the town limits or outside the town limits. It says all the property owned by the church. And that, all that property at that time, and still today, goes down to the north side of our property.
The developed property owned by the church, not the undeveloped property by the church.
That's your opinion.
Well, it says it in the thing, it says by the developed.
Let me know when I
Dan?
can speak. Let me know when I can speak. May I? May I? The agreement, again, says that you're gonna accept sanitary sewer for a 1.76 acre tract. That is the development site. It's shown in the back as the development site. It has nothing to do with the overall utility service agreement, because if you look at the condition, it says that it goes along the east side of Dayton Road from your manhole again, down to our northern property.
Does it say manhole number 4 anywhere on there?
MH2. MH2.
Dan, does it say anything about manhole 4? Does it say anything about 780-some foot down the road, or
No.
861?
This is the executed, signed copy of the utility agreement with the church.
So, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. You've got yours, mine is different. I don't know what the town board's is, but I think even your consultant agrees with me, because this is the general standard, what's been done for Lafayette, West Lafayette, and
I
everybody else.
didn't hear you
who won't
answer
put it
my
down.
question, though. Is there anything about the footage in there on the
No.
legal description? No legal description with footage on it?
No.
No, it talks about the proposed area of development, which is the 1.76 acres. I agree with that, but it doesn't talk about what is the overall utility service. Okay?
Yes. It talks about, it uses different terms. One term is the, let me get my glasses on. Site located, the 1.760 acre church site located at, and it gives the address. And that's, and the 1.76 acre site is shown on the document as an exhibit. And that site is just for the development site, and that's the site that the board approved the utilities to be extended to. That's all. And the lines shown on that 1.6 acre site are not a property line, not any property line. In fact, one of the lines shown on that 1.6 acre site goes right through the church building. So that's not the property line that the document then refers to when it says, the owner shall provide all easements necessary to provide utility, water, sanitary, sewer, and storm sewer service at no cost to the town of Dayton for the improvements set forth herein, as well as along the east side of Dayton Road, south of manhole number 2 to the owner church property line. Now, that site is not defining property lines or boundary. It's, well, boundary line, it's for the area to be serviced.
I thought there was 2
1.68.
properties down there. There's 2
No.
properties and different names, I understand, down there. Right?
This is not a property, and there's no legal
No, but you
description.
said to this, when you talk to the south end of whatever property it is, they've got two properties. You can't, it should say then to the south end of the second property or the third property, or list the footage or something. That is, I think that's what a lot of people are saying, is that second property has nothing to do with this. You know, you just say you gotta take it at the end of your property, well, they own another entity owns the other property between you guys.
The other entity signed it.
This document is not specific.
It sure
As
is.
far, and it sure isn't, you're right. This document is not specific. There are two properties. One is owned by the Church Incorporated. It says the same thing though, Dayton United Methodist Church Incorporated. The other is owned by the trustees of the Dayton United Methodist Church. This document does not refer to either one. It refers to the Dayton United Methodist Church. And then it is signed by the chairman of Administrative Council for the Dayton United Methodist Church, and it's also signed by the chairman of trustees of both properties.
It sounds pretty vague to me. It should have been clarified a lot more, but by this letter itself, I think we'll end up in court because I think they'll dispute it. So,
Well, as I said.
if you guys want to keep pushing that, that's.
We're happy to meet and talk to everybody. We've done what you've asked us to do. I disagree with Mr. Kohler on his position. His position seems to be the same as the church, and that's up to him. I think your consultant thinks differently, I think differently. But if we need to come back for another meeting or a special meeting or something for this, we're happy to do that. So I think, other than that, then, I think they want to come up and talk about the utility service agreement for Lakes Club. Do you have any other questions for me or for Pat at this point? Thank you.
Thank you.
So you guys want to talk?
Andy, you want to go ahead and start with the letter? Just start with the letter. Take a question.
Good evening, everybody. Andy Mix with Vester, and Greg and I put together this letter as, I think, as a way to start a discussion. And we kind of broke it down into 4 points. I'm going to talk specifically about number one. I did some calculations based on the 109 homes that are scheduled for Baker Farms, using IDEM parameters, and did some calculations, including the most conservative peaking factors. Did some calculations that show that an 8-inch sewer, sanitary sewer, and an 8-inch water main would more than serve this development. Okay. Now, as an engineer, I completely understand forward thinking. Let's think 20 years down the road. It does make sense to upsize that, each of those entities to probably the next size up. That's typically what happens. Greg asked, what's the cost difference between the 8-inch that we need and the 12-inch that the town is asking for? We did those calculations, and it's shown and attached to the letter. It seems to me that and I have talked to Michelle a couple times about this, and it's fairly common that the upsize, the cost of the upsize should be borne by the town as a benefit to the whole town as opposed to Malacca's.
Can we just clarify that's Michelle Watts, not me, Michelle?
Yes, I'm sorry. Michelle Watts would,
Yeah.
so we did a calculation on what's that difference, and that's shown, kind of summarized. I took the draft utility services agreement, took that last page where the fee calculation is and just kind of redlined it so that we can have a place to start a discussion. So, I think that's Mr. Wax's first point. You want to talk about?
So this is the upsizing you're talking about?
That's just the upsizing between an 8-inch water and a
What the-
12-inch water and an 8-inch sanitary and a
I agree with you. What they're talking about is, there's an 8-inch, when they go on down the road, the town in the past asked the developers to increase it to a 12-inch. In our ordinances and in our shop development guide, it says the town can ask this, but the town pays for it. I think what you guys are, and I agree with that. I think,
Thank you.
but I think what you're asking is on the cost, the monies you gotta spend, $164,000, you want a credit of $94,000.
That is correct, and just to be clear, the dollar figures I used for the difference between an 8-inch and 12-inch in each of those cases can come directly out of real bids, and frankly, they're
Real bids.
real bids for real work, recent bids, and frankly, it doesn't, I think it's reasonable to assume that the cost difference is gonna be about the same. So that's how I got those numbers.
Because you probably ought to get a couple estimates to fine tune it, to see how close it is, and then.
Maybe we should hear from PFNS concerning that point.
Yeah, Michelle will look at those costs, and they don't necessarily get easements normally. We review them and see if they're reasonable, and like he said, they took the bids or costs from other projects. We wouldn't really take estimates because it'd be difficult because people know that they're not going to do the work. So, yeah, those are reasonable cost differences, so we would agree with that. And we would basically agree that, you know, that the way you do this is with the credit to the total amount that they pay, so.
So is that
We would make it a part, and that's what we normally do, is make it a part of the utility service agreement. We would show it a little different than that, but we would show it similar to that. We would probably put a line into their credits, and then maybe see attached documentation for calculations or something like that. We would write it a little different, but the numbers and what he's done there, and the total amount, we would agree with that.
And this would apply, just so, I mean, I agree with all this, but the church gets the same thing too. They oversize the pipe and they get, it applies to everybody according to our ordinances and our development guide and everything, that if the town oversizes, then the church also gets a credit.
Well, and I think that's a discussion for another meeting. We did table that at the last board meeting. We're talking about the Baker Farm in this
Well, I'm
scenario.
just throwing it in that I think you're going to do it for one entity, you want to do it for all entities.
So what is the, you know, that's going to basically be the end of our development if they did it across the street, say they do bigger farms, they do that other side. What's the maximum amount of houses versus the 8-inch? Because you're not going to be able to jump anywhere else across that road, you know, where the bridge is, where you can kind of come to that farmhouse, you know, without mountain. So I mean, is the 8-inch suitable for that whole area?
If you look at that last page,
Yeah,
it's
this
a
is-
hand calculation, it's, at the top it says Baker Farms sanitary,
Mhm.
actually it says Baker Farms sand.
Yeah.
The 870 homes is an estimate of the capacity of that 12-inch. Okay?
Yeah, so I mean, I
So
get
that's
that,
total.
but I'm just wondering, size-wise, if that second field over there, if it was ever to get developed, would it even come close to
You cut the
the
8-inch.
398? If you went only, if you didn't have to, if we didn't have to pay for the 8-inch, I mean, the 12-inch, we kept it at the 8-inch, because there's not gonna be, there's not gonna be much more development, because there's a subdivision, it's a county subdivision, it's all in septic out there, and I don't think Dayton's gonna.
Right, and there's some terrain, there's some
Yeah.
issues with the terrain.
And then there's 65 on the kind of trapped corner.
That second number, 398, is using the exact same calculation, but with an 8-inch.
Okay.
So it's, call it 400 homes.
Tyrone, there's a lot of, when they jump across the road, there's that 198 acres, and then there's, I think, Adams got their farm out there, there's a Coker that's got 80-acre farm, and I think there's one other, so you're talking about this 8-inch line. You're talking about an 8-inch line feeding 110 houses plus another, if it's 110 for each 50 acres, there's another 440 houses, there's 550 then, plus the other fields that are out there without going across the interstate or on down the road.
Our utility area
Size of Dayton.
extends all the way down to Wyandotte Road.
Even the 12-inch, then the 870 homes wouldn't be enough to work and all that.
I may be able to shed a little light on this. I did do a calculation, just looking at an aerial map at those properties that you were just describing, and doing a quick acreage and say, X number of homes per acre. And I admit it's a very conceptual calculation, but the 870, the 12-inch, it's gonna cover most of that area. I can't guarantee that it's gonna cover it all, because I don't have enough data to do that, but that calculation has been done, and I can dig it out and send it to you if you'd like to see it.
I mean, I was,
But our main is on that side of the drain track, and, you know, some of that acreage may run off of a different lateral yet to be put in. But our utility area goes all the way to Wyandotte Road, so Lafayette, City of Lafayette has given us, from Haverty to Wyandotte to I-65 to the other side of the Wildcat is Dayton's responsibility. So when you're planning, that's, you're planning for a pretty large area.
Mark and I talked about this earlier. He has an input.
So about the size of the pie, yeah, and just what Andy's speaking to, there's, we do think that at some point that other side will be developed, as the low acreage that you're talking about. But I've looked at your calculations, so you're saying that this 8-inch will serve about 400 homes?
On the
398.
On the sanitary side, yes.
And on the water, how many homes will they do serve?
You know what?
I don't see it on the map.
I have it with me. I will get you that information in a second.
Mark, how many homes did you say?
On the wastewater, 198 homes, probably served by an 8-inch sewer main,
Well, they're doing,
110.
yeah, but if they got options to do 550. You got 5 fields.
Right.
4 more fields at 50 acres, so that's more than the 300 some homes. So it seems like the town would want to have a bigger pipe in there.
Well, I think this is to boil it down, so here's the deal, so, the town would like to have 12-inch sewer, 12-inch water. They're saying, hey, they're only gonna take 8 acres on each one, so we're talking, we're developing now. We would like to credit back on that $164,000 on that utility service agreement. We only want to pay about $70,000. We'll go ahead and put in the 12-inch sewer and water for you, but that's why we want that credit to pay for that cost difference between 8 and 12. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what's going on. So is that reasonable? I always thought that the town could determine. I didn't know that we had to pay the difference in between 8 and 12. And actually, it spoke to me and said, hey, we're responsible all the way down to Wyandotte Road. So there was no question in my mind that we need to put in 12-inch and 12.
Well, we have an agreement with Lafayette to down to Wyandotte and up to Hagerty. They can't even supply water to any other, you guys or anybody without our approval.
Yeah.
Which is one of the big arguments earlier.
So I think that because there may be future development, that you put in 12-inch both and that you credit them.
I think also when you annex, it's an option, it's never been brought up, but when you annex new land, I think the town board has the option to increase the fees for that annexed land for cost recovery. Like in Lafayette, some of them, you go out, I think, north of the Baptist Church, some fees are $3,000 an acre and some are $7,000 an acre. I was just told that today that you can.
No, you'd only increase the fees if you had increased costs. Because right now, that whole service area you just explained, the way we came up with the 1,800 and the 1,200 is we took that area, what it could be served, and what your costs were, like when you put the water system in, when you put the sanitary sewer in, we just divided those total costs by the number of acres. That's where we got the 18 and the 12. Now, if the town would spend $100,000 in extending the line out that way, then you could take that $100,000, put it into the cost recovery divided by the number of acres, and then maybe you would get 1,250 and 1,850 an acre.
So they pay it either
So-
way, they pay it.
So the same thing if you're buying easements or anything too, that could go back into your cost recovery costs. But it's set right now, the 18 and the 12 is based on what you've spent years and years and years ago over the history. So if you spend more money, you could, and sometimes it might not be worth it. If you did a $50,000 project, it might not be worth it to divide that out by the number of total acres, it would change a whole lot.
Would be nice.
But you can't just change it because someone else develops. So what Mark was saying is correct. It's like, and that's how it's normally done. The towns, the entities, they don't want to come up with a check and pay these guys $70,000 to do your work. What you want to, they owe you money, so it's just as easy to credit them the money. You get the work done, and you still. And normally the rule too is that the credits can't exceed their fees either. So for some reason, you ask them to do something, or you needed to do something, it was going to exceed your credits, then you would have to go back to them and say, well, we're not sure we can do this unless you eat the difference. I mean, you could do that. I'm just saying that those are the rules, the way it's set up. But his numbers look reasonable, and that looks reasonable to get the town the benefit, and I'm speaking, for your guys' benefit, that's reasonable, and that's the normal way to do it. It would be, as long as, Mark's happy with it.
So it should be included in our utility
It
service.
should be included in the utility service.
You guys good with that?
Now, back to something you said, Ashley, which is a good point. Our water and sewer trunk lines are on the south side of this railroad track. So if we needed to go whatever county road that is, 375 or something, if we needed to come back in and loop that somehow, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Up to 65 and then loop it back to the north on
Right.
that same trunk line. That's the picture we would want to have. I mean, I know that's, you always want to think that way, when you think about it. So yeah, the credits make sense now that I understand them. The credits make sense. I feel that we do need 12-inch lines, sewer and water.
You're good with it?
In the best case scenario for this whole project, it's 12-inch lines, they get the credit. By some miracle, the water mains on one side and the sewer's on the other side.
So that would be written
From a
in.
utility guy, that's just the way you do it, If that doesn't happen, it doesn't end the world, but that's the way common sense tells you to put it. Utilities.
So on our utility agreement, that would be written in there, that the credits, so we don't run into another problem where there's not just information.
But you made a good point,
Yes,
you can't
she
be more
said.
than the cost.
Yeah. It would be like about, I don't know if he gave you the number, they don't have a copy of this, do they?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay, so those red numbers or those numbers on there,
Their copies.
those would be in the utility service.
Yeah.
They'd be in a little different format, not like that, but it would just probably be one credit number, another credit number, then the total amount due. So the total amount due would be $70,000 if all that math is correct.
Do you feel confident, Mike, about that price difference being
Yeah,
fair?
yeah, and Michelle looked at that.
Does it just take into account the cost of the line?
Mostly material.
It's mostly material
Yeah.
because the difference in trench width and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff between 8 and 12 is virtually
It's
negligible.
mainly just the size of the pipe.
The pipe cost.
Anybody in the audience have any comments? They want to comment on either of these subjects? Cindy?
Do I have to hit all subjects at one time, or can I talk again later? I've been told that in Lafayette, when they annex land, that they increase the cost recovery fees for the annexed land. Like somebody that's doing a development on one side of the road is paying $7,000 per acre.
That's what I
and
already said. I already told them.
Oh, I must have
They
been
said-
sleeping. And on the other side was 3,000.
It says only if you have increased, they were saying only if you have increased costs for that development, then you can ask.
And $100,000 in oversized pipes is not increased cost?
What's the other?
Well, do you want me to go backwards to the earlier subject?
Well,
or-
I forgot that.
All right, do you want me to step to the podium?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to, everybody, some are sitting, some are walking up.
Cindy Marsh, 7.9 Shady Lane. And going back to the church easement. I don't know if Dave gave you guys a copy of the facts that Mr. Smith had sent out here to the town office shortly after the utility service agreement for the church was signed. This is regarding the easement. And the easement had to have, or the utility service agreement had to have a correction because the easement wasn't attached. And the easement, and he specifies this in his facts, was to go to town limits. It says town limits. Did you get a copy of that, Michelle? Okay, we'll have to get a copy from Dave. And,
Does Mike send?
yes, it was from this Mike Smith. He was with Hawkins then.
I don't have a copy of that.
Okay,
We'll
I'll
get
make
you
sure
one.
you get a copy too. And the other thing is, Dayton has a development guide, which, yeah, I'm telling you anything. And in it, there is a sample utility service agreement. In that sample utility service agreement, let me get to it here. On page 5, line 2, it says, "The owner-developer shall provide all on-site easements necessary to provide utility, water, and sanitary sewer service at no cost to the town of Dayton." That was clearly the intent with the easement that was put on the utility service agreement and with the writing. The facts also said that it's understood that there would be future or further, I forget the word that was used, further adjustments to or modifications to the utility service agreement. So it was pretty clear that it was not meant to be cut and dry, that there were going to be other modifications. But as far as the easement goes, I don't think there's any doubt that it goes to town limits and no further, no matter how much people want it to be otherwise. And that's all.
Does anybody else like to have any comment, residents? All right, okay.
Are we in agreement on the ordinance and credits as far as Baker Farms utility service agreement?
Well, first of all, we can't make a decision tonight. I'm in agreement on one thing, the oversizing the pipes. I think if the town asks these gentlemen to increase the pipes, we gotta pay for it. But I'm not for it if we do it to only them and nobody else. Whether it's a new development up here, over there, or down here, if you're gonna do it to one, you do it, keep it the same to everybody.
Well,
So if we don't do it to everybody, no, I'm not. Otherwise, if we are fair and do it to everybody, then I say yes.
but it's in our ordinance, the developer, should the town ask the developer to upsize, then we give credits. So is there a reason why the Baker Farm utility service agreement wouldn't have that language in it? And we are asking them to upsize, correct?
We have to ask the church upside.
So we're talking about Baker Farms in this
So
discussion.
it's all together, actually, you know. I'm not gonna agree to one without the others. Because it's unfair to the other entity, because you'll have me okay one and then you'll slash the other. That's what it comes down to.
Utility service agreement with the churches was executed 17 years ago, but we are talking about Baker Farms.
Well, we can't make a
The
decision,
special-
so let's all digest the information.
Why can't we make a decision?
Because
It was in the
It's in
agreement for the meeting tonight with Greg.
she
Henry,
emailed
and Tyrone.
everybody, actually,
Tyrone,
there's our agreement.
there's no votes or decisions
Okay,
tonight.
okay, that's fine.
And then Reed will have this audio, probably look at the video, and I will scan everything to him. And then if you guys choose to put them on the agenda for Monday's
Okay.
meeting, then Reed will be here.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, Reed wants to be able to look over everything as well. And then since Mike's not here as well,
Okay,
yeah.
Well, with the new
I mean,
information.
he's on the email, so I assume that he's seen.
Yeah, the email from Tyrone, and it was clarified with Greg that this was strictly an informational.
Everything that you emailed us last week about those meetings, he was on those emails.
Right, I'm saying when Tyrone called the meeting tonight, it says from Tyrone that no decisions or votes will be made tonight.
I just wanted to gather information so
Okay,
we
that's
can.
cool.
Yeah.
I understand.
So if you guys want to make the choice to put them on the agenda, if you can let me know now, since I'm gonna be doing that by Wednesday morning, then,
Rick will be at our town meeting on the 10th, right?
yeah, he'll be back tomorrow. It's just, we didn't want to have meetings 2 nights in a row.
Okay.
So that's why he just said we'll catch him up and then he'll know at Monday's
I
meeting.
think at our town board meeting, we need to discuss and make a decision on this. And we need to do the follow-up discussion on the church also, what they were asking. They
Well,
need to both
Tyrone
be
did
done.
send, he replied to the email that I sent out about the agenda, that any further discussion along, about the church, he wants as a special meeting. So if you guys want to set that,
Church, I talked to Dave Crandall today, you know, we get these 4-hour meetings where it just ends up being a yelling match where it's.
Should this one be a special meeting too? so
This
we
is a
don't have-
special meeting.
It is.
No, I mean, when we make a decision,
Well, they can.
we had no discussion.
I mean, we can do it.
Well, if you're going to special on one, the philosophy goes the same on the other. If you have a 4-hour discussion, you might want to, Tyrone, to be the same thing.
Well, the problem is where are you guys taking your water line to? Like the farthest point?
I'm sorry.
The farthest point that your water line's going to when you run it?
Our south boundary.
Okay, so if the
The main
town,
trunk.
so if the town came to you and said, we want to, you know, we won't make you run it the whole way, we upsize your things from 8-inch to 12-inch, that's basically what has happened with us and our other prior problems, so that's why we need to have it. If we're gonna do this, Ron kind of keeps throwing it out there that it's like some hidden agenda or something, but the problem is, there's the wordage has been taken out, and that's why I want to make sure going forward, and any kind of legal thing that the town is doing, that is black and white, because 20 years from now, who knows, going to be on the board, they're going to be looking back and say, 2019, you let them do this, and now you're,
I
We
think,
can always
whatever.
get, we can always get a location from that south property line.
sure.
We'll say south
I mean,
property line and then just list the
I would
actual
like, yeah,
survey
like,
location
survey
of it.
locations
And
and all
then,
that.
and that'll be part of the agreement.
Because, you know, 20 years, it's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
And that's what
We can do that.
stock down with the other. one. That's why we're-
Is on that 12-inch line, you're talking about, you guys are choosing to run it to the south end of the property, right along Dayton Road, a 12-inch line.
I was told we're not choosing, but yes, we are. We're doing it.
As designed, yeah, it stops probably 5 feet south of the property line, just for convenience.
So you're not running all the way down. 'Cause then you gotta go across it.
There's a requirement that we run the utilities to our southernmost boundary line of the property.
What requirement, where does that?
Where's that?
I'm sorry, what?
Where does that require?
That requirement's been by the town.
Well, in our ordinance, it says you don't have to run it to the south corner. You only have to run it to the front corner of your projected site. You gotta disperse it to all the houses, but you don't have to run it in the trunk and stuff.
Well, in our dealings with our drawings and our consultant, we've been running it to the south boundary line. If you're telling me we don't have to, Our drawings will be changed next week. If you're gonna follow
The way I read this thing, we better get a better interpretation.
I think we have
Mr. Cole?
DFS,
Mr. Kohler,
to help.
he has a question on
us.
this.
I have a question. If the Methodist Church had to upsize to a 12-inch, that's what they're supposed to hook on to.
Right.
Nothing to do with an 8-inch, that was previous. But if they want service, they would hook on to a 12-inch because that's what's there, isn't it?
They should be coming back to that 12-inch,
Yeah.
hooking on.
So
They're
Don't they-
just
so don't
asking.
they
I
have
think
to
they're
put a
willing to
12-inch in?
So wouldn't they hook onto the 12-inch?
Don't they have to
Because
put a
that's
12-inch
what's
in?
there?
They're required to put in what they need for their service.
So they put in an
So you
8-inch
can
with a
go-
12-inch.
So they want
So you
to
can go
reduce it?
down?
Mike, you wanna-
No, they,
Okay.
no, there's a 12-inch out there right now, okay?
Right.
The only thing that's required for the amount of water required for what they're doing is an 8-inch line.
I don't care about that.
Okay, but
It's set at a 12-inch.
I know.
And if they want to hook on,
they come, that's why the town is asking them to put a 12-inch line instead of an 8-inch line, because
but
the
you
town
want,
wants more water.
you want us to pay for that. And we don't want to pay for that. If you want to hook onto it, go ahead, but you have to pay for it.
Sue,
Well,
I think
no.
they're paying for the line, they just want the credit for the oversized
Yeah.
line. Everybody has to put in an 8-inch line, they don't have to put a 12-inch. I don't know why you didn't start 30 years ago with a 12-inch line, instead of
So
asking.
they're going to
everybody
need
go
a
to
12-inch.
Huh?
So they're going to need a 12-inch with
They-
all the property they're going to put in.
Well, that's why the town will probably ask them to put in a 12-inch, but just like the church, you ask them to put a 12-inch line, but then the town pays for the additional from 8 to 12-inch.
But the church is trying to get their money from the town, and the town refuses to pay them.
Well, that's,
So-
we haven't yet, we're gonna have, that's why we got 2 more meetings, one with these guys and one with the church. And the rules ought to be the same, and,
It should be, yes.
yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Anybody else have any comments on that? Greg?
We have 3 more points to talk about.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I got a question.
Mr. Malakis?
Run.
Oh, I thought, never mind, I got it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Greg Malakis with M&C Development. So, I'll talk about items 2, 3, and 4 of that letter. Number 2 is putting the easement in place across the church property. Per the utility service agreement that the church signed in 2002, the easement all the way down their property should have been put in place years ago. Their requirement was to put the easement in place years ago, and that never took place. At our last meeting, we talked about all this. That's when you discussed it and authorized us to do the surveying work, the legal work, to prepare the easement, and that's been done, and it is on Reed Murtaugh's desk right now. So I'm having to pay for the preparation of this easement, and since the church was supposed to have done it clear back in 2002, I'm asking for a reimbursement for the costs that we're incurring to put it in place, because the church didn't do it when they were supposed to have done it way back when.
What is that?
Hold on.
I don't have all the costs, it's still spinning, you know? The dollars,
Well,
the clock's
still-
the clock's still running.
It's still gotta be determined on if they had to give that easement on the first property or the second one. I think that's all up in the air. There's 2 properties, and some of the people think it's only on the one. I agree with you, they probably had to give the easement on the one, but not both of them. So that's what I guess, since that meeting, they've come up with this, saying they're going to court, I guess. So it makes a difference in the, they apparently think that, you guys think you have easements all the way down there, and they must feel real strong that they don't have easements because they're willing to go to court. And I think they probably had their, whatever lawyers check it out too, so.
Well,
So I think before, we probably to make a decision, we probably ought to find out legally, that document that was signed so many years ago, not by our lawyer, not by your lawyer, some independent, maybe it's a court, decide if it's legal or not. What's the legality of it? What's that south border really mean? When I talk to you several times, sometimes you tell me it's only the south corner of the developed area. Then sometimes you stand here and say it's the whole south border. The other night after the meeting, you said it was only the developed area.
The developed area is what they paid their fees for.
Yes. But
the utility service agreement says to the end of the property.
well, last year, you said it was to the end of the annex property in town, and Michelle Watts, I'm pretty sure I got an email, what she said too. So, somewhere in all this, things have sort of changed.
I don't think we've ever said that it's to annex property, because
No,
that's
to
not-
the,
it's not to the annex area, it's not to a property line, it's not to a city limits line. It's never been to a city limits line, it's always been to a property line. Doesn't matter where the city limits or the town limits are. I don't think I've ever said
okay,
that.
what document talks about manhole 4? You remember seeing that anywhere?
Yeah, in the utility service agreement.
Okay, and what is manhole,
It was a draft utility service agreement.
Yeah, now it's taking everything to manhole 4, right? And manhole 4
There's
is.
manhole 3 and manhole 4.
And manhole 4 is the city limits. So
No, I don't know where
in your documents, you just said, it's taken it to I've read those documents, it's taken to manhole 4, that was the city limits. So back then, if that document meant the south end of town, it would have said, past manhole 4, another 1,000 some foot to the south border.
I would assume manhole 4 was the
Yeah,
property.
What is manhole 4 that you're referring
I got the documents at home. I can
There was a draft utility service agreement where.
to? That they never used?
Everything
No,
was,
And there's no manhole 4?
So what,
No,
well, Dan, everything was based on the annexed land at number 4. Why would you draw up draft agreements and then all of a sudden change it and leave out all that?
Well, they left out the sidewalks that were in that same draft though too, Ron. There's a whole sidewalks which updated in that draft.
yeah,
there was discussion about having to put in sidewalk before, yeah.
We have a draft
Well,
utility.
you guys are
We
still,
have a draft utility service agreement right now, and that was our starting point.
well, in our manuals, it also says you're still responsible for all the easements, no matter whether the church did some or not. You're responsible for the easements to take it on down from wherever it is now.
See,
So,
I
if you want to
think
get technical.
I think the point of requiring the easement is to make sure that they were let off the hook and putting the water and sewer in it, or the water all the way down. And the point of putting the easement in place was, again, to at least have the easement in place so that there's no gap in the connectivity of the services. Is that a correct statement? Mike?
I think so. I didn't really follow, you could say it again real quick.
Well, so they weren't required to put in the water all the way down their property, they were let off on that, okay? In lieu of that, it was then added as a requirement to put the easement in place to the far end of their property, so that there's no gap in at least an easement that runs across the property to get to the next property.
I can assume that was discussed, but you gotta understand that there were so many things discussed about we'll do this and no, we want you to do that. There's so many draft discussions, you know, I can't tell you what was decided on except this final agreement.
And the final agreement says that runs to the end of their
Yeah,
property.
that's all I can say.
Okay, so it's per the agreement from 2002, you know, the church signed the agreement and they did not put the easement in place. I'm, based on the last meeting, have done everything that you authorized and asked us to do, and I have a lot of expense involved in doing that as well, and would ask, you know, a reimbursement, you know, for that expense because it should have been done by the church long ago.
you don't have that final number
I
yet
don't
because
have
it's
it.
still ongoing.
No, we're still spending money tonight. I don't know what the number is. Then the next item is So right now, we're just talking about upsizing and the easement. On this next item, I'm referring to having to put in all the water and sewer from where the church stopped, all the way across their property, and all the way down my property. At this point, I'm not being let off the hook to run it across my property, so I'm having to do what the church didn't have to do, and put it across their property as well. So I'm getting hammered both ways, right? So typically when I see agreements, when there are agreements like this, and I run it to the far end of my property for the benefit of future development, that whoever ties into that in the future, because I'm spending all of this money to get it down there, across the church property and my property to the far end, then when someone else ties onto it, because I've done it for future benefit, that there should be some recapture of my actual hard cost of installing it. Because I'm probably gonna spend $400,000 to $500,000 putting the water and sewer in. All right, and here, and I have in my hand right here, an agreement from Indiana American Water that I signed in 2012. I was doing a development over on State Street Hill. And I had to run water, almost a block down Chauncey, okay? And in part of this agreement was that if someone else were to tap onto that water and use that main that I put in, then I would be able to recapture some of my cost. Well, that's just now happening because they're building those great big huge apartment buildings over there right now, and they tied into the water that I put in. And so I have a W-9 and a settlement amount that they're proposing to pay me $16,000, which isn't a lot, but they're proposing to pay me $16,830. But that's what they're proposing to pay me because they're tying on to the main that I put in.
Right. First of all, it would have been nice to know of all this information. Some of this I agree with, some I don't. Would have been nice to know in our fiscal report all these costs so we could make a determination, and none of this was in our fiscal report, which the town then would know what all these costs are costing.
This cost isn't ever paid by the town. This reimbursement isn't paid by the town. It's paid by the future developer. And also to make let me just make another point, just to clear it up.
Hey guys, he's
Well, I was just asking.
Yeah, so right here I found in ordinance 99-6, it says, in order to facilitate future expansion of development, the town may require the developer to oversize utility lines or extend utility lines through the proposed development. Costs for oversizing and or extension beyond the area to be served by the developer will be the responsibility of the town. So, according to that, like all this stuff taken to the south side can't be really required by the town. So when we talk about the church not taking it all away, it's right here in this ordinance that they did get a deal cut to go halfway through the 12-inch pipes.
when it says throughout the development, it doesn't say along the road. Throughout means supplying your development by
Because it says
taking it
in
into.
order to facilitate future expansion or development.
Yeah.
So that's talking about.
And it says, doesn't it say an or in there somewhere?
Utility lines or extended utilities.
Or what?
Extended utilities. Utility lines, which would be telephone lines, or utilities, which would probably be the water pipes. I don't know if you guys have copies.
In order to facilitate future expansion or development, the town may require the developer to oversize utility lines or extend utility lines throughout the proposed development. Cost for oversizing, so that sounds like it's just a choice that they did, it's not an automatic thing, we can ask them. It's saying we can ask them to do that if we want to.
Yeah.
But it's not an automatic, nobody automatically, it's what agreement you have at the time.
Then
You
why
know?
would we?
Why on my development did I only take, why do I only have water and sewage? Why don't I have it to the end of my property and it's only part way? you
People
know?
blame on checking the ordinances back then.
Well, nobody, yeah, right, Tyrone, it doesn't say take it to the south,
When you go back and
it
look at all
says
this
just
stuff from
serve
2002.
the area. Well,
I think we should maybe have Mike Smith.
anyway, wait a
Wait
second,
on some
wait
of
a
this.
second. I think Cindy wanted to talk long before these other people, so
Thank
I
you.
didn't recognize her.
I draw your attention to the cost recovery program, which
She
I
wanted to
can't,
add something to it there.
I can't quote it for verbatim, but it specifically says that developers are not required to extend it to the end of their property line. And it also says that in the development guide, which is the same exact language as in the ordinance. And then I'm talking about the development guide that was updated in 2014 and the one that was effective in 1999. Both are the same.
Well, you guys don't have to extend it. First of all, you want to extend it most of the way because your other development's right directly across the street.
Okay, that's a point of clarification. First of all, we do not, Ms. My partner Steve's here, we do not have an option on the rest of that development plan that you're talking about yet. We do not have it.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
but the owner of the property told me a year ago you did have
You're
it.
assuming that we have an option on that property. We do not have an option on any other property.
Okay, at the annexation meeting, Steve, I asked you, do you have an option for across the road? And you said no. Then you came up to me afterward and you said you asked the wrong question. Did we have the first right of refusal? Do you have a first right of refusal? Steve told me that, and the owners told me that. Do you have a first right of refusal?
We don't even have that yet. No, we don't.
Well, you had it last year.
We may have had one, but
Well, we don't have it.
Well, yeah, it
We
expired
don't have it.
probably,
No,
so-
we don't have it, we've never had it, and.
Steve said you had it last year, Greg.
We are able to get it if we want it, but we don't.
Well, he told me after the meeting last year that you had it, the first right of refusal, and the owners told me you had an option to buy. That's probably the same thing in their book. One's the same, it's mixing words. One's the same as the other.
Okay, all right.
Here's where it says in the cost recovery, the developer is not required to extend said utility extensions through the project to the limit of their property boundary. That's right in our cost recovery. It says you don't have to extend it to the limit. So sounds to me like the board needs to do a little thinking and get their own laws straight and decide what they want to do first before they make decisions with the church
Then I would prefer to
and
not
you.
have to put it in.
Well, good.
I believe
I
this
don't
board
think you
relies on BF&S as being our checkpoint and for us board members to
Why?
spout
Well,
assumptions.
actually, I
think we need to
disagree there a little
consult
bit, because
our engineering
there's
company.
different opinions with BF&S, and I've got some of them documented on email from them. I've been told different things, you know? I think maybe we need an independent source that's not on one side or the other telling us some things once in a while.
I'm sorry, we have hired BF&S, our engineering company, to protect this town and to move us forward in development.
Well, we hired
If we don't listen to BF&S on things like this, then why?
We hired B&S Engineering to run roads through my fields, and did you listen to them? No, you didn't, Ashley. You don't listen to everybody just because you hire them.
You hire engineering companies to protect.
We voted
this
against,
town and
we
this
voted
interest.
against the other engineers, didn't we? We can vote against these engineers if we deem it necessary.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Anyway, number 3 is if I install the line and other people are then tying on to it, I'm gonna spend a lot of money to put that line in, and future reimbursement like Indiana American Water does on every deal. That's number 3. Number 4 is the point that's already been made over and over and over, and that is that up until now, I'm having to put in the water and sewer main, well, and in particular the water main across the front of the church property and extend it clear to the end of my property. The church wasn't made to do that, and I'm being asked to do that. So there is a giant expense that I'm having to incur. They didn't have to incur it, and now you're saying they only have to put an easement in place, which is crazy.
No, the second half
That's just.
They gotta
that's
put it
just-
in what they agreed to.
Makes
in the
no
first
sense whatsoever.
Well, we've changed a lot of things out here, Greg, in 20 years, okay? A lot of things have changed, and sorry the old town didn't ask and do so. I understand that you have to take it back, I think you said the other night, you have to take it back to the point of connection. I asked Michelle, she sent me an email, you said the point of connection, I asked you both, and it's on Wesleyan Drive. You know, now, this is another thing, I don't know, this is why I guess some people in the town went to court to see what these costs would be, so we're not at the 12th and a half hour and screwing you up, because our town doesn't even know. It sounds to me like we're going to be handing over several $100,000 worth of credits and money back here. And it would have been nice to know that. You guys had all put it in the fiscal report to begin with.
No, it's not true. That's not accurate.
I think the court.
It's not accurate. That's not an accurate statement.
They didn't cite against me because, Dan, it wasn't my lawsuit. But I think they might have decided against a lot of the people, though,
Item
that
number-
you didn't have to put it in the report.
Item number
but now
2.
you're asking for it.
Should have been the church long ago. Item number 2 should have been the church. Item number 3 are future developers that tie onto it, and any reimbursement could come from their utility service fees that they pay. It doesn't come out of the church, out of the town's budget right now at all. It's future development. It's out of their utility service fee in the future. Okay, so it's all, that's in the future. Number 2 is the church, number 3 is in the future, number 4, the point is that the church was let off the hook. So,
Well, they haven't been let off yet.
well, they weren't made to run the water and sewer.
Cindy, you'd like to talk again when you get done.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I got
I
questions.
think, wait a second, everybody, we should keep it roughly 5 minutes or so. How about you guys?
I just want to say that we have our ordinances and that haven't been followed exactly in the past, and we're asking the council to now follow what we have written down in our ordinance book. We have our rules, we have our ordinances to go by. The ordinance says that the church and you only have to take it to your point of service. You don't have to extend it to the end of your property. The church didn't have to. It says that it's your responsibility to bring it back to the point of connection, which is Wesleyan Drive. And there is no provision anywhere in our ordinances for a kickback to you later when somebody else hooks on. And that would be grossly unfair.
Sue, would you like to talk?
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why are you just now figuring this out? Why didn't you figure out where the water was when you,
2 years ago.
We knew where the water was,
Why
and
are
we
you
were
just-
told long ago that there wasn't an easement. We've been trying to get it for a long time.
but this is the first I've heard you talk about it.
We've talked about this a long time.
You
Couple
have?
months ago,
I haven't
We've
they
been
did
talking
bring it
about
up.
an easement for a long time. And these guys know it. We've been
Oh,
talking about it.
yeah, I
for-
mean-
Greg,
about
to be
the
fair,
easement.
we've been talking about this whole project for a year and a half, since 2016. And it was just brought up last fall downtown at Sally's office about the easements on each side. That's when I questioned you guys, that's when you started,
That's when we
Thinking about
realized
it.
we didn't have the easement.
yeah, so
We-
that
At
has,
least we thought we didn't have the easement.
Yeah,
But we-
so that hasn't-
But we found out a lot more since then, as we've been discussing tonight.
Well, I used to work for Bruce Dubstra and Bill Long, and they knew in advance what all the expenses were gonna be. Why did you not look into that?
You know,
You didn't
we
think of it?
didn't know, we didn't know that we didn't have the easements.
How could you not know?
Well, it doesn't matter.
You're not a very good developer,
It-
then, are you?
Well,
Okay, I'm just curious,
okay.
just curious.
yeah, Nancy. go ahead.
Okay. When you guys first started talking how this upsizing and everything was gonna be a great benefit to the town of Dayton, how is it gonna benefit me? Yeah, I have not heard anyone say how I'm being benefited. Number 2 is, why wouldn't the developer recover their cost when they sell their product? Isn't that what most
Yes.
people do when they sell something, they recover their cost with the product. So why am I having to pay for your recovery cost? I'm not even gonna be buying your product, but yet I have to pay for the manufacture of your product.
You're not
And
having to pay
I'm not
for
benefiting
any-
from it any
You're
whatsoever.
not having to pay for
And number
anything.
two, you turned around and you said that future developers, after you extend to the end of the property or whatever, that the future developers, when they connect, that is their cost. So therefore, isn't that the same for you now? Where you connect, that's your cost? Because being the developer, maybe I'm misunderstanding
So up
something.
until tonight, I'm asked to put the water and sewer all the way down the church property, all the way down Dayton Road. The church wasn't made to do that. And I've been asked to run it clear down to, across the front of my
There was an
property,
agreement.
all the way to the back, all the way to the far end of my property. So I'm being asked to put in double the amount
Well,
of
Greg,
water
it
and
was your
sewer.
choice to buy land down there way past down the road
and,
too.
Just in lieu of, you know, as a consideration for me having to put in double the amount, if that's where we end up, then there should be some recapture in the future.
Can you do that recapture in the future from the people developing past you down there?
Yes, that's what I was referring to exactly. It's not now.
Not now.
So I have a question.
Or is it not now?
When Michelle Watson, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I understood it, I thought she stated that if a developer comes in or whoever buys land, it doesn't matter where that point of connect is, if you want to develop, you have to go wherever it's at, no matter where it's at, because you're choosing to
You
connect
do
to get
your
service.
research and you go down, you find all these
So
things.
is that,
and you
is
don't-
that, so I mean, it doesn't matter where it's at, if you gotta find wherever it's at, and that's your responsibility.
That's how I would answer the question. Here's the point of service. You want to come here and develop, then whatever happened or however that got there is, to me, is not really an issue. It's the town has their service right here. If you want to do anything, you have to do that service.
The point that Greg is making, and I wanted to add a little to it, as far as recapture goes. For example, right now, he builds the sewer from manhole number 2 down to the south side of his property. But just from manhole number 2 to the north side of his property is going to be about $200,000 worth of improvements.
But isn't
Of
that
sewer-
just the
of sewer and water.
gamble you take of
Well,
developing?
wait a minute.
It is.
Let me finish. So he builds that sewer, all right? What the church is doing, or 2 members of the church, well, 4 members, when that one maybe, is that property that they have, they would like to at some point think about putting in retirement homes. They haven't made any decision like that yet, but that was the thoughts of the individuals that we were talking to from the church at that time. And I said at that time, well, if you want to do something with that property right now, you're going to have to put in that sewer and water. Okay, well, they're not doing anything with it right now. So let's say tomorrow we're done. We've got it in, he's paid the $200,000 to get the sewer down to his property. Church walks in the door, we're ready now. We want to build. We want to tap onto that sewer.
Charge them
Well,
for it.
who's paying for that?
You should charge them. They have, that's what.
Well, that's exactly what we're asking.
I'm asking for it.
That's what he's asking.
I mean, I agree with that. They can either bring their water and sewage in from where they got it on their property and go on down, or they can take it off of yours, but like at the old nursery in Lafayette, when Carpet Land added to ours, they had to pay the
So
rights.
it's their property and any other property that is out in that area that
Yeah, that's where you
benefits from that installation.
And not only that, they should help, if they're gonna pay, we have to pay for an easement now, they should help pay for that easement when they go ahead.
No,
and
they, that's for them to negotiate with you guys on the easements. Apparently, they don't think they have to do much with easements, but how you recover your money, like Nancy said, is you sell a house, you sell the lot.
I'm just making the point.
Yeah, I know.
You see my point.
Well, the point I'd like to see is you do have 110 lots at 60,000, there's $6.5 million. It's not like you're penniless with nothing coming in either. Okay, Cindy?
Where in our ordinance book does it say that someone who's hooking up to an existing utility line has to pay the person that puts it in. It doesn't.
It doesn't say that.
It doesn't say that, and it shouldn't, a precedent should not be set now.
And an important thing earlier, like Mike said, the point of connection is right where it is now.
Yes.
You know, it's not on down the road, it's not halfway, two-thirds, whatever. It's
In the
where it is
previous draft copies of the utility service agreement with the United Methodist Church, there was a lot of language in there about them receiving credit on that sewer line, you know, as they were running it down to the future manhole number 4.
On the oversizing or just?
Well, on oversizing and on future people tapping onto that line.
And it had nothing to do with when the town made them spend the extra, I thought it was 48,000 to move the sewer line twice. 48, and then I was told today it was 60,000, that none of those credits were for that between Shady Lane and Westlake Drive.
Well,
I think it's so vague that we don't really know what the heck is, so we should go by our own ordinances, by our own laws and rules, and it seems to me when I was clerk, you had to follow your own, our ordinances are the laws of our council. Now, if you want to change those and make a special exception or something, go ahead and change them, but you should follow what's on our books and what's on all our agreements and ordinances and development guides and stuff. And I think we're in a lot of disagreement with two sides on that. So maybe we've gotten enough, it seems like we ought to take this and digest it or something. The church can get their lawyers, you guys got some lawyers, you might want to get more or something, I don't know. We go from here.
Appreciate that. Can I make a comment?
Very good.
Ron keeps talking about this Dayton letter, and it says, any attempt to secure an easement without permission of the church will result in legal action. Who would disagree with that? And then it says, Dayton Church welcomes an agreement. We've given you agreement, presented properly, say the terms. That's what we've done. If they don't like it, somebody needs to tell us, or we need to have a meeting on that. They're not here threatening a lawsuit.
Has any one of you guys contacted either?
I'm talking,
any other-
Ron. Can I finish what I'm doing first, please?
Oh, I thought you stopped. Sorry.
No, I didn't.
Sorry.
I'm slow, I guess,
Yeah.
as I get older. But it says in here, without permission of the church will result in legal action. It doesn't say, hey, we're gonna file a lawsuit. That's not their intent at all. Their intent, pursuant to this letter, is to, we welcome an agreement.
Good.
So I want to get that on the record. Thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Yes.
We presented a letter, offer of intent to the church. I don't know, how long has it been?
Oh, quite a while.
Oh, a year and a half ago? Okay, they know what we've offered, and that is to restore their property and everything, okay? And the easement is prepared, it's with Reed Bertall right now to present to the church. That it can't be done without the church signing it. The church signs the easement. So nothing can be done without the church signing it. And we
Good.
made their offer. They know that we're going to restore their property when we're done. So it's all there. They have all the parts and pieces they need.
I agree, but when you get a letter, when our board gets a letter like this one today, just read, it sounds like they have, it sounds to me like there's some questions about these easements, and I think before our board decides something, it seems to me like you guys ought to go ahead and talk to the church, and maybe you can hammer out an agreement with them or
The
something.
easement is required from the church to the town. It's with the town. It's the town's responsibility, and that's where, at the last meeting, which was several months ago, that the town authorized us to move forward and expend money to get it prepared, and we've done just that. The town board asked us to do that, and we did it. And it's ready to sign.
So we should then talk to the church, right?
Yes.
Or,
I think that's-
yeah, the church would dedicate the easement to the town of Dayton.
No, should we, before we sign this easement, should we be talking to the church? Sounds to me like they
You
don't.
don't sign
don't
the
sign the
easement.
easement.
The church signs it.
should we take it to the church and have them sign it before we agree on anything else?
The church will review it at their meeting and probably vote like.
Okay, who gives them that easement?
You guys, we give it to your attorney.
Your attorney, or you guys.
It's the town
Just
board, it's
sit
not
with
us.
Reed until he can read it and then give it back to us. They'll sign it, deed it over to us, and that's done.
He's had that document for several weeks. Completed.
And as I said, he made a change just on the date, and everything else was fine, so.
Great, sounds like we're on board
Right
there.
now, he's holding,
Who's he, Reed?
Well, the church has been up here for the last 5 months, and you guys haven't.
Tammy, you said Reed has its easement agreement, right?
he has the agreement to deed it over to us, correct?
It's just the right to pass their property, there's no deed, it's just a.
It's a grant
The
easement.
wordage to.
Yeah.
It's a temporary.
Allow us.
It's ready for them to sign.
It is,
Once they
yes.
sign it, then you have the right to put, or the town has the right to put.
Yeah, but what if they don't sign it?
I would expect at that time that they would go with their letter and say, okay, now we're working on this agreement,
Yeah.
that they would come back with something
I don't
else.
care, I don't care if we give them agreement, but it sounds to me like that it's,
They need
it
that
sounds like
easement
they're not gonna agree to it.
so they can go forward.
Well, they said they're open to an agreement, so they wanted to see something. So it looks to me like they're wanting to do that. If we can't reach an agreement, then I think it's up to the board to decide how they want to enforce that easement, either by lawsuit or whatever. It's not our position to do that.
Right, because they signed the agreement with the town, not us. Back in 2002, that they had to provide the easement.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see if they sign it, I guess, or not.
Make a motion we adjourn.
If anybody else got any questions or comments, either side?
When should we, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can I,
Uh,
what should we do at this point?
I think we can talk to Reed tomorrow, he's back in his office, see where he's at with that. And if it needs to go back to the church for,
You guys show up in the churches.
Probably
If
needs
they
to
have
go
a
to the
counter
church.
proposal, we're open to listen
Yep.
to it, but
Yeah.
you guys need to make it move forward. I
Yep.
mean, we've done everything we're supposed to do.
Why aren't you guys here the same time the church is here? And you
Yeah.
guys have that discussion going. I mean, the church was just here last week, and they were here a couple weeks even before that.
Tell the
You
board,
guys
don't
weren't
tell
here.
us. Tell the board.
They were
It's not our job.
Okay, not your job.
Make a motion we adjourn.
second?
It's just their job to make a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not their
Thank
job.
you very
It's not your
much.
job to walk away.
Stick it to the people of Dayton.